Eraserhead is my most spiritual film.
Why elaborate on that?
No.
And I make films because I have not learned anything else.
Welcome to the Emma of the Impact Film Podcast. Roses are red, violets are blue. Murder is sweet, and I'll kill you. I'm Emma of the Impact, and today we're discussing Kind Hearts and Coronets, and my guest is...
Harry Marx.
It's always the wrong way. I should just do this. I find myself pointing to no one. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Kind heart.
You do. Oh, look at you being like Mr. Tennyson. Anyway. Kind Hearts and Coronets is the narration, the wit, the prose of our leading character, Louis Mazzini, as he murders his way up the rank, his aristocracy. I can't say that word, and I'm going to let it stay. Aristocracy of a family, all played by Sir Alec Guinness. I always have my guests pick the film. It means something. Why did you pick this wicked film?
Two reasons. The first is I saw the cast and I saw Alec Guinness, and I love Alec
Did you know
Guinness.
he was a comedian? I didn't.
I knew he had been in comedic films. I did not know how much of a comedic actor he was, and I loved his performances in this. But the other reason I chose this is because as I was reading the plot, I was like, I've seen this before, but not this film. And it reminded me 10 years ago, because I live in New Jersey, I work in New York, I had gotten tickets to a Broadway show, A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. And it is a musical that is based on both the novel that this film is based on, as well as the film itself. And the reason I know this is because the actor who plays all the members of the family in the show it's the same actor for all 7 roles. So they borrowed that trope that gimmick from this film and used it in the musical. And there were parts of the film watching where I was like singing the songs from the show because they just line up so perfectly. So I was like, I want to see what the movie that it was based on, what it's like. And it's very different in terms of tone.
What was the name of the musical?
A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder.
And the book is called Israel Rank, the memoir of a...
Autobiography of a criminal.
There you go. I know you get it. So I usually don't ask a lot of questions about my guests. I usually make it about the film. But you're a big fan of TCM. I can tell on your social medias. People should follow you and learn a bit more about TCM and its goals. How did that come about for you? The suit looks really great when you give a good presentation. I feel like I'm watching Eddie Muller talk to me about a film noir.
I should have gotten myself all gussied up, but I'm sorry. Okay. But I grew up watching TCM in my house. Classic film is literally in my DNA. My grandfather, Harry Noble Jr., was a songwriter, a musician. He appeared in the 1944 comedy Step Lively with Frank Sinatra. Growing up, TCM was always on in the early days of AMC. That was on because that was showing classic films before they pivoted to scripted content. So I've been watching old movies. My mom would be watching The Harvey Girls with Judy Garland, or my dad would have on a Humphrey Bogart film, and I just got into it. After college, I would say in college, I was taking film courses. I was originally going to be a screenwriter with a film major, and as I was learning more about the making of films and studying films and film history, I just got very into that. And then when it died down a little bit, and when TikTok came about, I'd started an account, and I was like, what do I want to do with this? Because I don't want to just lurk and just scroll through. So I saw that Turner Classic Movies had an account on TikTok, and they were showing clips from old movies. But they weren't showing the one thing that I always loved, which is my favorite part of TCM, which is the introductions. Mm-hmm. So I decided I would put my research skills to work because I had been working as a writer and researcher for a podcast company. I would put my research skills to work and start researching these films and doing my own introductions.
You do it so well. Everyone I show is like, is this a TCM introduction? For just a quick little thing, just in case somebody that might not know, Turner Classic Movies is the preservation of classic movies, and it was firstly funded and bought by Ted Turner, who is Jane Fonda's most favorite ex-husband. So
I did not know that, actually.
That's what she describes him. So, and now it's led by other film preservationists. Do they still have the intros at TCM?
They do. They still have the intros. They have a bunch of different programming. So it's not just the intros, but they have conversations with filmmakers and producers and actors. They actually recently have been doing a conversation with content creators about their favorite films and how they got into classic film. And I would love to be invited, TCM, if you see this.
If they don't see you on TikTok, they're not seeing this. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah,
You gotta place the nets out, though. The little
yeah. As much as I love Turner Classic Movies and what they do for preservation and film and all of that, I have a love-hate relationship with them right now. But that's for another podcast.
That sounds similar to our movie. The quote, which I'm going to read, I'm going to admit to everybody just to make sure I don't get it incorrect. Kind hearts are more than coronets, and simple faith than Norman blood. That's Lord Tennyson. And it's just that basic morals, virtue, character over class. That's what links the title of the movie, but also makes it ironic in a lot of ways. I usually don't like to pick something and compare it to other things that exist. But this film, it has no correlation to Oscar Wilde, but it feels like the most Oscar Wilde film I've ever seen, even more than any adaptation of any of his work. And then there's a certain absurdity, but it still has that layer of Oscar Wilde and just the comedy of British stoicism that just covers even the most absurd scenes that, like, oh, that's so Monty Python, but the tone, the scene, and especially the language of our main character who narrates pretty much the entire film, that it doesn't ever feel like Monty Python, and all the brutal murders never feel, ooh, it just happens. And our main character has been compared to by others as an anti-hero, or in that idea. What do you feel about that? Just to present that he was born of noble birth by his mother, who married for love, and then she was kicked out of the family, and the husband died. She's poor. She tries to go back to the family, and they won't accept her back. In the book Israel Rank, there's a lot of political gravity that you lose in the book, and there's also some anti-Semitism in the book. There's a lot of layers to that. I think one of the main points they want to make with it is that he's not fully British, even though he is born and raised in Britain. That idea of British blood, royal blood grossness. Do you feel sympathetic for him? Do you feel for his cause? Or do you feel like he's an anti-hero, which I think is a very important term, because I like to be divisive even though I know it means nothing.
Yeah, I started out rooting for him, and then by the end of the film, I was like, nope, he should be in jail. I don't see him as an anti-hero. I do see him as a villain by the end of the movie, because where he may have started out murdering his family to get revenge on them for ostracizing his mother and leaving her in poverty, I get the feeling he actually just enjoyed killing them. It wasn't about revenge. It was more about the money and getting access to the money, and not necessarily to do anything with it.
It was a chore, almost.
But it may have started out that way, but I think he got a taste for it. Like he was.
I think he liked getting away with it.
Yes, that's true. Yes, he liked getting away with it, because he doesn't like straight out stab them, shoot them, murder them. Although he does shoot the one guy, but
the Lord at the end.
The Lord at the end. But I feel like that was a means to an end. He needed to get rid of him that day because he was told that the guy was going to have a kid with the woman he was about to marry. And the others were very like Agatha Christie happened in the background. Oh, it was an accident. How did that happen? I think he enjoyed the sort of the puzzle of how do I kill these people while making it look like an accident. And yeah, I didn't see him as an anti-hero or a hero of any kind. I saw him as the villain by the end.
Anti-hero to me is somebody that does heroic things, usually something that really tells me somebody's an anti-hero for myself, is they're doing heroic things, clearly heroic. They're just might not be doing it for the right reason, but who cares? They did something heroic.
Right.
He's the most heroic thing that could come of this, because the movie starts with him writing his memoirs in jail. We know he's going to hang in the morning. And so he's writing his memoirs of these murders, his motives, everything. I really don't feel bad for his family dying, because it's the way the film wants you to feel. You don't feel happy either. It's just, oh yes, that's part of the film as it goes. It felt to me, some of them felt especially funny because they get pretty absurd. but it never reaches that high level. It always stays, and that's one of what Hamer really wanted to do with this film, is specifically work with the language. The film is very much about language, and it's very much about the acting performances. When I first started watching this film, because I knew nothing about this, because I try as much as I can to know nothing, and I always watch a film more than once if it's for the podcast, especially. And so I was going to casually just soak it in, and I'm thinking, and it's late at night, and I'm thinking, you know what, movie? You think you're smarter than me. I can tell. You think you're smarter than me, and maybe you are, as I just knock a bunch of stuff on my desk. Maybe you are smarter than me. But once I stopped, it wasn't it eases you in. The film eases you into Lewis's prose. It's almost like written prose is being read to us. It's clever, it's witty, it doesn't ever feel boring, but it is persistent.
Yeah, so the language is interesting to me because, like you said, he's half Italian. He wasn't raised in aristocracy, but he sells himself as an aristocrat, and he really tries to come off as being better than he was raised. And
He's better.
oh, yeah, absolutely.
He knows he's better. I can't
He
do a
deserves that fortune more than they do because he was denied it for so long. You get the sense that he has worked very hard to take on their affectations and take on their mannerisms, and he's wearing it as a costume almost. It's not really him. Pieces of him come out, like that line right before, it's like in the last 20 minutes of the movie where Sabella comes to him and tries to blackmail him, and he says to her, I liked her a lot. She was very good.
Cute.
But he says to her something like, you and I are right for each other, something along those lines. You get these little glimpses of the real Louis Mazzini.
Moments that really speak out to me, but continue.
Yeah, and I'll ask you, what moments called out to you where you got a sense of the real Louis?
Well, one is calculated and part of telling the story, but the only kind of heart we see is, because we watch little bits and pieces of him growing up, and his mother, although very kind, she married for love. She was cast out, and so that's one of the only kindnesses or love in this film, truly. We see the parents in this frame that's always shaped like a heart with both parents in it. On the side there, she's making sure he knows his birthright. The people before him that would, if they happen not to be there, you would be the Duke. Just so you know, it's brought up a few times. She said it in when she was emotional once. She called for a favor from the banker of the family, the Descoings, which is the name of the film, who we meet more later. She asked she probably said, we're part of the family. Could you please I'm just asking for a job for my son. And he says, secretary, letter, generally, no, thank you. And that's when she's like, I wish all of them were dead. And she dies briefly afterwards, naturally. And that's what really sets him off, because she isn't allowed to be buried in the family plot, which classism is a big deal then. And that was something that is emotional to him. The second moment is when he's on the stand and he is being told, so you were seeing Lady Descoing, Edith. Were you going to the house to break things off with Sabella? And he just says, no. Even though you were seeing the other lady, yes. He surprises himself. It's not a good thing about him, but I think that felt like one of the more honest things that is part of his character.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a movie about class. I think that's something brilliant that John Dighton, the co-screenwriter, and Robert Hamer, the director, did, is that they focused it more on the class battle between the haves and the have-nots, rather than what the novel was really about, which was anti-Semitism. And there are dribs and drabs of anti-Semitism in the film still. There's a line, it's when Louis is still a shop assistant. He's working behind a counter. He's basically made to feel that shop assistants are considered an inferior race who never emerge from the other side of the counter, which is a shot across the bow of Jewish shopkeepers and people of Jewish descent who ran banks, who ran tailor shops, and all of this. And you're talking about a film that came out 4 years after the end of World War II, was made 3 years after the end of World War II, and was released a year after another Alec Guinness film, Oliver Twist, in which he plays Fagin in a
This-
Semitic depiction.
The thing interesting about Fagin that you bring up, this is a little digression. My dad was an actor. That was his favorite part to play. But the person that is famous for playing, most famous besides maybe Alec Guinness, playing Fagin it was Ron Moody. And he played
Mhm.
Fagin for this. They asked him, this is a part we're really interested in you doing. This is a caricature of a Jewish man. I'm a Jewish
Right.
man. He planned on making the character so absurd, it's a joke upon itself. Louis has a lot of hubris. But
Oh, he carries a chip on his shoulder. I think he feels that he deserved better than he got, which I think also makes his journey to killing his way up the family. He feels more justified in doing it because he feels like he's taking away what was rightfully his in the first place. This should have been mine all along. It's interesting because a lot of the people he's killing his way through are, I don't want to say sociopathic, but they are so rich they have no clue what's going on in the real world. And this is a man who was born into a house of love. He was raised with love. His mother loved him. He has fond memories of his father. And yet he is perhaps the most sociopathic person in the entire movie. He's playing two women at the same time. And it doesn't care one way or the other. He marries the Lady Descoing out of convenience more than anything. And meanwhile, Sabella is his side piece that he just comes and goes.
I think actually she's his twin flame. I think she's his counterpart. She's so
Absolutely
manipulative. And but do you really want to deal with somebody that's just as devious as you if you are a devious person?
He could walk away from her at any point and not feel a thing. Like he is, especially by the end of the movie, he is like devoid of any kind of moral compass, really. It's interesting because there's some members of the family, like the first guy he meets, who's a real schmuck and standoffish and too rich. And
The
you're
banker's
happy to
son,
Yeah.
I could feel the rage. I don't really sympathize with Louis, but when the first Des Moines family member he meets, is this young man, and they're at the store, and he puts his cane onto Louis, and so you're listening to our
keeps him away,
conversation, and I do feel that rage. Another time I did feel like a rage bubbling up in me was the Descoing family had a funeral. At this point, he's invited to those funerals, and Lord Descoing, who is the final boss, if you will, he says, there was this woman who was claiming she had stake into our family plot. Do you think anybody can just get in here? It was much more insulting, actually. And then I could feel the rage because that was his mother.
I would have been like, you just moved up to the top of the list.
It's also for the audience and in a good way of storytelling that we know the Lord knows his mother in some way. So when the murder happens and do you know why I'm going to kill you?
Yes.
He does the
supervillain speech. He does the whole supervillain speech of, do you know, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Like he does the whole James Bond supervillain speech right before he offs the guy. I'm supposed to support this? I don't know. I do agree, eat the rich, and these people have it coming. But at the same time, where they set the tone with the first kill, the guy who clearly deserved it, but then the one right after that was this poor little nebbishy photographer who didn't hurt anybody. And
I love how we first meet him when Louis has the camera it's upside down, so we first see that character upside down. Yeah, he's very nice.
Yeah,
he's one of the nicer Descoings.
Anybody, and he's got his little hobby that he enjoys, his photography, and he's hiding.
Gotta go. He's part of the
Exactly.
obstacles, and it's not personal.
Exactly, it's just business.
And one of the best jokes for me is when he's introducing us to the Reverend, who we have seen a little bit, who's very old. And Louis says in his narration, which is throughout the film, as we said, they always give the dollar members of the family over to the church. Like the idea, like we don't really know anything. It's like this slight of witticism, and that is throughout the film. It really is this narration that continues throughout the film, and it's something for me that I had to find that rhythm because I'm used to a lot of different comedies. I'm not an expert on comedy like I've been in horror. I'm used to a high-low comedy. There's a memory I have of Acrobatty, I think. It's a Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Okay.
And he's quoting Richard Lovelace, and I wrote it down to make sure. Stone walls do not a prison make, nor iron bars in a cage, but they sure do help, don't they, Doc? When there's a tiger in a cage that's trying to get a Bugs Bunny. So it's bringing something of class and meaning, supposedly, depending on whether subjective, to something lower. Kevin Smith, the American director, has described himself as prime steak and tater tots.
Yeah.
I think that's commonly more of US comedy. Do you know Ealing Studios? Have you seen a lot of their films that produced this movie?
I know Ealing Studios pretty well. Oh God, they've done a lot.
Lady Killers is usually the next popular one.
Lavender
haven't
Hill
seen.
Mob, Lady Killers, Dunkirk in 1958, which wasn't a comedy.
Doesn't have to be a comedy, just Ealing Studios.
Yeah, they were probably one of the most, if not the most prominent British studio for a good 30 years or so. If they were an American studio, they would have been one of the top 5. They would have been right up there with Paramount and RKO and Warner Brothers. A lot of movies came out of there. So yeah, I know them. And what's funny is you watch the Lavender Hill Mob, which is a very funny, like outwardly laugh out loud funny comedy. And you watch this and it's like night and day. I swear to God, this movie, when they talk dry humor, dry British humor, this script must have been written in the Sahara. Like it was so dryly written and delivered. I saw The Third Man last night on the big screen.
Oh,
I
great
laughed
film.
more during that film than I laughed during this.
I had to watch this a second time, but then I was laughing a lot.
I'll have to rewatch it because there are line deliveries in here that are probably a lot funnier than I gave them credit for. And then there are some that are just, they land with a thud. But it is, like you said, they're very stoic and they are just so dry and wry in their delivery that it's hard to grasp onto. And it probably would play better in front of an audience where everybody is reacting at the same time, as opposed to me watching on my TV and on my phone and my iPad and all that.
So, what were funny moments for you? I have a few funny moments.
The last shot of the film where he realizes he leaves his memoir in the jail.
My memoirs.
My memoirs. And it's funny because the musical ends the same way, except at the end of the musical, spoiler alert, one of the police officers brings his journal out where he's written his memoirs and says, "Oh, you forgot this. I thought you might need it." And so he has this one last bit of good luck before he goes out into the world.
Because there's an American ending for this.
Yeah,
because
that's right.
The Hays Code, anybody that does anything villainous needs to be punished. They show, I don't know, a cop finding it in the jail cell. And so we know. In the British film, I feel like we're not supposed to know whether he gets away with it or not. And I like that. But some funny moments for me is when the murders are getting more absurd. And
yes. Oh, when he takes the arrow to the one on the
Lady
balloon,
Descoing, yes.
I laughed so hard at that.
So she's a big protester for women's suffrage. This is the late 1800s, early 1900s kind of time. She's in an air balloon trying to spread the word. He's, of course, thinking of Longfellow, and he's shot an arrow into the air, which would end where it lands, I don't know where. But it's like this really clever little, because it is something you do have to think about. And that is also a question with comedy. If you have to think about it too hard, is it funny? I think that's a very subjective thing. Another funny moment for me is when he's with the Reverend, and the Reverend's strolling on, and then the Reverend that does drink in the family and then Dennis Price in disguise just goes, and then the Reverend just says, "You don't say," and just goes forward with it. Which
I think you've had too much to drink.
Another one which felt, obviously, this film came out in the 60s, which our main actor, Dennis Price, and our director were both homosexuals in Britain when it was illegal to be gay. So there's also a little bit of, probably not intentional, but there are hints into that of feeling outside the society. But this does not have to, which I don't know why I mentioned that now, because it has nothing to do with the death. I think is funny. It's the Admiral, who's an old Navy man, always on a boat, and the joke is he's going to go down with the ship, even though there's no other people on the ship. They're rescued. There's no reason for him to stay on the ship. It just goes like this, and the water goes up, and it felt like a Wes Anderson movie kind of thing to happen.
Also, the fact that the accident, like the two ships colliding, is basically two toys in a bathtub. I lost it at that moment. It was so funny to me that they just basically used two miniatures and crashed them into each other.
Kind Hearts and Coronets, which is considered a staple of comedy. The people that usually are a big fan of this movie are people that view comedy as a science. When it came to TCM, I did see the guest, someone they had guest presenters. It was Patton Oswalt who had picked Patton Oswalt had mentioned this movie as a precursor to Peter Sellers.
Yeah.
Even though Alec Guinness goes on to play multiple parts again as a big comedian, I can't get over it, Harry, that the people used to be like, "Oh, there's an Alec Guinness movie? Let's go. It'll be hilarious." Because that's just not how I know him.
Right.
It's true, and he can be funny. I've seen more American films than British.
Everyone, he's Obi-Wan. Like that's
Oh,
he will always
that's
be
the first
Obi-Wan.
thought. Obi-Wan. Do you feel like Kind Hearts and Coronets, like Patton Oswalt had suggested, kind of influenced Peter Sellers, influenced Monty Python, or do you think it's influenced other British humor? Because for me, I watched a lot of British TV shows with my grandparents. One was Keeping Up Appearances. I don't know, but anyway,
Is
how
that
do you
with the Hyacinth Bouquet?
Hyacinth Bouquet, her slimline
Lady
white
of the house.
telephone, lady of the house speaking. Oh my. The cool things. He also knew Crow. Do you feel that this film, being very different from other comedies in general, there's no other comedy that I have seen that is like this movie? I have read Oscar Wilde. I've read 2 books, okay? And some other stuff. So I'm not an expert, but I know some stuff. I'm not an expert. I have a general idea. It feels even wittier than that. Like the comedy has ramped up because we're not as concerned with plot. So I feel like I've never seen a film like Kind Hearts and Coronets.
It's unique. I grew up watching the Marx Brothers, the Stooges,
Lauren
Marx
Hardy.
Brothers are Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello. My favorites are the Marx Brothers. And my last name is Marx, so
If I walk like that, I'm gonna need a chiropractor.
exactly. Any closer, and I'd be on the other side of you. This
Sorry.
this film is so interesting to me because in terms of comedy, the way Monty Python works best is you've got one straight man and you've got one nutcase. You've got like the parrot sketch. You've got the guy behind the counter who is clearly playing it straight, and then you've got the one who keeps slamming the dead parrot on the counter saying this parrot has ceased to be. And it works because you've got one playing off the other. This one is weird because everyone is the straight man. Every single person in here, even Alec Guinness, to a large degree, is the straight man.
To a large degree. He's more subtle.
He's more subtle. Everything is so subtle, which is probably why I didn't find it as funny as it's been described, because everyone says this is one of the greatest British comedies of all time. And it reminded me of, was it a Family Guy joke? And it was like, they're watching British porn, and it's literally 2 people sitting in chairs opposite each other saying, I think I'll go to bed. Okay, and that's the end of the scene. It's funny because the British are known for these great comedies of errors. You've got 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Death at a Funeral. There are these great movies where the British keep running into each other, and even A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, that scene where Sabella comes to him while he's got Edith in the other room. There's a song called I've Decided to Marry You, and I swear to God, I thought she was going to say the words I've decided to marry you. When Edith comes to
you got the rhythm of the film. I think it's a specific comedy. You have to be in the mood for this.
Yeah.
You have to be in the mood for this.
But that scene, so he's with Sabella. Edith shows up and says, I've decided to accept your proposal. We'll marry you. In the show, it is not slapstick, but it is a very visual and physical comedy of the guy playing Louis. His name is Monty in the show. He's between 2 rooms in the hallway, and he's singing about, do I marry Sabella or do I marry Edith? I can't remember her name in the show. And he's bouncing from room to room to room. It's a funny bit that he's doing throughout this show. And I was waiting for something like that because this is the kind of comedy that would be great for that. And it just never comes. You get these little pieces of like the arrow flying through the air, or sudden the smoke coming out behind them while they're eating when the guy goes up in flames. Like, why not a mushroom cloud or something clearly like over the top that the British have done? I was waiting for something
supposed to be
bigger.
very British. It is the understatement of humor and being British. And so it is supposed to be. That is the heaviness of the film that might not make it funny for you. Or to me, I would say it was funny the first time, but it was hilarious the second time. It's something that you have to be a little prepared for or really in the mood. Sometimes I probably just want to put on something with John Candy instead of Kind Hearts and Coronets. They're very different. Comedy is one of the genres I am least self-educated in.
Self-taught.
So the question before, if you have to think about it too much, is it funny? Generally, I would say no. Or if a joke has to be explained. But I would say with this film, it's not, that's not the truth, which I think that's part of the magic of this film. There is a scene and it just feels like nothing really happened, and not in a way that was boring to me, and it's a joke. It's so British. I think that
Yeah.
I can't fully appreciate this film because I'm not British and I don't understand that classism. I know about it, but I haven't lived it. I think you have to be British of a long era, but a certain era to be completely understand all of the
Yeah.
jokes. There's a scene in this movie where the admiral he's about to do the thin red line scene where he's
Mhm.
like positioning things, gonna talk about an old battle, and he just gets his, I think it's a jam, and Louis put napalm in it, and he just goes
Oh,
into
yeah.
it,
He puts the bomb
boom,
inside. Yep.
which sounds like it would be something from Terry Gilliam's Brazil,
Right.
or maybe even silly like Monty Python, but it's played so lightly. But I think that is the film's intent. Whether you like it or not is the question. But I think the film itself is delivering the humor and its intent of
Yeah.
very British. I
Yeah.
can't do humor. So I do think the film intends what it needs to do. Is this movie going to be funny for everyone? No. I think if you want to study humor, I think it's an important film to watch.
It is. I don't think it's that cerebral in terms of humor because he explains everything he's doing throughout the movie, and the jokes are like on the surface are funny jokes. But the one thing I think that this film gets wrong is that it doesn't realize comedy is a rhythm. Comedy is music, and it needs to be executed in a way that it hits a certain pace. If you listen to stand-up comedians, the way they deliver a joke, there is a rhythm to it. If you watch a Marx Brothers movie, I would say that's more cerebral than anything in this film. If you listen to
Oh, I
Groucho's
wouldn't call
rant,
this film cerebral at all.
no, I don't think any of the jokes in here need to be explained. I think they all land. They're pretty self-explanatory. If you listen to Groucho in any of his speeches, the one in Animal Crackers, I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How he got in my pajamas, I don't know. That whole thing, there he goes by so quickly that you need to go back and rewatch them to find out every little joke and reference he made in those speeches. But there's a rhythm to it, and if you're aware of it, you'll hear it. You'll understand when something lands and when something doesn't because the rhythm was off. And this film should have gone a little further. It's not that it wasn't funny, but it's just the humor could have gone just a hair or two a little more into what the British humor that you and I were talking about earlier, the Monty Python and the Rowan Atkinson, where they do get a little bit zany, a little bit over the top, but not too much. This was just so flat in terms of British humor.
That's
It
why I
was
liked it.
yeah, I enjoyed the movie. I just didn't find it as funny as everyone else
I don't
has.
disagree with you. I don't. I think it really comes to personal taste. When it comes to Marx Brothers, I think of like they do wacky things and wacky things happen, but people don't usually acknowledge the way they speak or the
Mhm.
wackiness. And so they're a contrast. And especially that, what's the name of that woman they're always bothering?
Oh, who in the Marx
Lin-
Brothers movies?
yes.
Oh, Margaret Dumont.
Yes, she's the one that's the big contrast because she's also absurd, but
Right,
not in the way they are. Yeah.
she is the foil. She is the straight man in almost all of the Marx Brothers movies. Margaret Dumont has been their eternal foil. And what's funny is they loved her. She was such good friends with them and they adored her. But she was a hoity-toity, rich whoever to their zany American antics.
Yeah, I would agree with you if I had to say if I love dark humor. I think that's one of the reasons it really keeps on drawing me in. I do think that Price is brilliant in this film, and I love that coat on a man. That
Oh, he looks
coat
so good in this movie.
that is
I
just
wanted
like
his
it's long
wardrobe.
and it just goes
It's
above
tapered.
the knee. Oh, why do men not wear jackets? Anybody wear jackets like that? It's gorgeous. Money. Anyway,
Yeah.
uh, it's a matter of taste. I do think it has stapled itself within the zeitgeist of the time that inspired humor later on. I think it's one of the important pillars there. It's not the only one. I do think it's important. And I think I enjoyed it much as a black comedy, even though part of it that you have to get used to is even though it's narration, all the jokes, which I think is intentional, feel like the main character is telling himself, like, wasn't I funny? Wasn't that funny when
Mm,
I did that funny thing?
yeah.
So maybe that's also why it doesn't reach the audience as well. And we're complicit in watching these murders and not really feeling like, a movie where we're watching murders. It doesn't feel like we're watching a movie where murders are happening. Really. We see them, but it doesn't feel like that throughout the film mostly because of the use of language. If you love comedies, if you love black comedies, you should at least watch it once. You
Absolutely.
definitely have to be in the mood for it because the narration never stops as well. It's funny that we haven't talked enough about Alec Guinness playing 6 of the characters in this, all caricatures of British aristocracy. I said it that time. Look at me.
Nailed it.
Got it. The Duke, the banker, who becomes more of a character, but we don't need to go into that. The general, the admiral one that goes with the ship, which I think is one of my favorite. I think that might be my favorite death. The Reverend, the photographer, who's the one you mentioned.
He's a nice dude, yeah.
Dude, young Henry.
He's like, I found a friend who also likes photography, and then that friend kills him.
Lady Agatha, who is the women's suffrage, and also the Colonel, who's the one that's always asleep. But the Lord is the one, the final boss at the end.
Lady Agatha, I loved because her introduction is her walking down the street, smashing windows with her cane. I thought that was hysterical. Like,
she's the most passionate character in the whole movie.
Yep. And then when she gets arrested, they rip her hat off, and you can see Alec Guinness underneath all of that. It's so funny. But I love, like you said, we didn't talk about a lot about his performance, but he disappears into these roles. You forget that's Alec Guinness in each of these roles.
It's funny, he's doing the same thing as this other actor I'm going to mention. But Alec Guinness was known, when he wasn't doing this character thing, as the man with no face, which also makes me adjacently think to the Man of 1,000 Faces, Lon Chaney Sr. But they're both doing the same thing, putting on makeup and doing things like they create something from, not that Chaney had a blank face, but they create something completely different, including the mannerisms, the walk. Alec Guinness, he was the less funny one, maybe because I didn't hear his narration. He was more of a compliment to some funny moments, but he used a different walk for every character. He was very calculated in making sure each character seemed different.
Yeah, he did this a lot. He did a lot of characters. He
said he used to go to the zoo and observe animals.
Oh, that's interesting.
Parts. What are some of your favorite comedies in general? Just let me know. Tell me.
My favorite comedies. Let's see. So I would say Duck Soup, Animal Cracker, literally anything Marx Brothers at MGM. Though I
love the specification.
Yeah, when they went to Paramount, wasn't great.
Was Night at the Opera Paramount one where they had to do a song and dance that had nothing to do with the brothers? Is that a Paramount one? Night at the Opera?
I believe Night at the Opera was Paramount. Night at the Opera.
I love that.
It's an American comedy film. I just want to double check because I get the... Oh, sorry. No, I'm backwards. Paramount was where they started. So Coconuts, Animal Crackers, Duck Soup, Horse Feathers, and there was one more that were all at Paramount. Those are the early ones. MGM was the later one. They got wooed away to MGM, and Night at the Opera is an MGM film. So the MGM ones, they lose Zeppo. They stop.
No, not Zeppo.
Yeah, and because they're
He's
not
a Marx brother, but
I know. But again,
Zeppo.
they need a straight man. And that's part of the problem. Is part of the reason those films don't work as well as the Paramount ones is because they lost their straight man to help ground them.
I love Night at the Opera. I love the magic song in it.
Night at the Opera is the first one they did for MGM, and it's one of my favorite Marx Brothers films. They get progressively worse after that. Day at the Races, Day at the Circus, The Big Store is probably their worst and almost unwatchable.
Seen that one.
It's not great. There's one good song in it, Sing While You Sell, and then the rest of the movie is garbage. So the early ones are all based mostly on their vaudeville stuff. Coconuts, Animal Crackers. Horse Feathers was based on Fun in High School, I think, was a vaudeville bit for them. Those comedies are among my favorites. In terms of modern comedies, Step Brothers, Anchorman, 40-Year-Old Virgin, I love those. Classic comedies, Airplane. Airplane is like a joke a second, and it's nonstop laughs for me. Naked Gun, Police Academy, a lot of the 80s stuff I love. I did a double feature several months ago. It was Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh my God. Dr. Pretorius is one of my favorite characters of all time. I love when he's sitting in a crypt by himself, just having a little meal, and he's just so happy by himself doing it. I'm like, that's so me. And then
It
when the
was
monster comes in, he's like, that's
it's
one of my favorite comedic characters.
But what threw me is doing this double feature because it was at a theater that is unfortunately now closed
Oh,
that I
I'm
was
sorry. I saw
doing
that.
ambassadorship for. Yeah, it was called The Village at Sopak. So you watch Frankenstein, which is straight. It's a horror film. It's very serious in tone, and then you watch Bride of Frankenstein, and it's basically a black comedy. It is so different in tone from
A
the
big
first
part of it's
movie.
Pretorius, though. Like
It
the village woman that's just hysterical.
the village woman is the one who threw me for a loop because I was not I hadn't seen it before and I was not expecting her to be as hilarious as she was. And there are moments of horror and there are moments of shock and stuff, but like Pretorius and the village woman are like they just make it a completely different film in tone from the first one. And when you watch them back to back, you realize, oh, this is supposed to be a lot funnier than everyone thinks it is.
It has a certain flair, for sure. It's one of my favorite movies. Would you recommend Kind Hearts and Coronets to your average movie watcher?
It's so hard to recommend classics to average movie watchers because I work
Let's
with
say an
people and
average movie watcher that has seen TCM, doesn't mind watching foreign films, doesn't mind
yeah,
watching old films. I mean
I
that. They'll
yeah,
watch
it's
almost anything, but would you think this is too dry, too unique, or not? How would
no,
you
it's not Dr. Zhivago, it's not Lawrence of Arabia, it's not Gone with the Wind. You're not sitting there for hours on end waiting for this thing. Although I love Gone with the Wind and Lawrence of Arabia, but you're not sitting there. You have to be intently focused on what's going on. It's a very low stakes picture. It flies by pretty quickly.
Oh, I
It
think
goes.
for the comedy, you have to be very tuned in, but that's my opinion.
I maybe because it's just so subtle and it's very understated in terms of comedy. But I
British.
think where certain comedies draw you in and keep you glued and focused on it, this one you have to pay attention to and not check your watch every 2 seconds. I enjoyed the movie. I liked it a lot, and I probably will do a rewatch to see if it's funnier the second time around.
Maybe not a lot, but
A little funnier,
who knows?
yeah. It's
Who knows?
yeah, I think it depends on how you watch it too. I think if you watch it with other people and you get that group reaction, I think that can change everything. Like I've seen The Third Man. I never noticed how funny it was until I saw it with a packed house. It's a different experience. So yeah, I'd recommend it. I think it's important to watch movies like this, especially if you're into comedy, to see the different layers of comedy and the different gradations out there. You go from Marx Brothers, which is up here, and then you go to something a little less zany, maybe Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which is still pretty crazy.
Oh, that's zany. That's super corny and zany.
It's corny and it's zany, but I see
The
the Marx
monsters
Brothers
are still
as like
scary, though. Supposedly, they act
that's
like real monsters. It's not like Young Frankenstein where everyone's zany.
exactly. Yeah, so that's actually probably a better equivalent. You've got Marx Brothers, you've got Young Frankenstein, and then lower on the scale of how funny is it, you've got Kind Hearts and Coronets. It's a cute movie, it's a fun movie, it's probably a good comfort film. I'd recommend it. Yeah.
How did this movie make you feel?
I didn't feel anything by the end, honestly. It was
You're the
like
first.
I will say I still hate the rich. And
I don't believe in the death penalty for anyone. I
I agree.
hate the rich. I didn't root for him. I didn't think he was an anti-hero. I didn't think he was doing anything heroic because no one's going to learn anything from these people being dying. It's only for his own personal gain. I don't know. I think I really enjoyed it because maybe people that know more about Oscar Wilde could correct me. It felt like I was watching the best Oscar Wilde film I could watch, which you have to be
Mhm.
prepared for, which any high school clever quote or something like that, it's usually Oscar Wilde, isn't it? It's usually this one of the most popular people to
Yeah.
quote because of the wit. I think it's the Britishness of this film that really you have to get used to. So the film made you feel nothing.
Yeah, it's,
Interesting.
I
You're the
feel like
first. That's I'm not.
nothing
I am.
nothing is
I'm
such a
just
bad
poking at you. That's what I do. There's
yeah,
no
no,
judgment.
it's just it was so low stakes and I didn't walk away like thinking about it for days on end like some other movies have made me feel. It was cute and I enjoyed it and I felt better for having finally watched it.
Hmm, excellent.
I usually don't like remakes, but I think this would be prime fodder for Richard Curtis to take a stab at and maybe have like, Steve Coogan as Louis. I think that would be a very funny IP to remake the way British comedy should look,
It
I
would
think.
have to be either they make it so American, which would take away the humor. You can't make this. It's a
No,
British film about Britishness, so it definitely would
that's why
have
I
to
want
be a
Richard
British
Curtis.
film. Yeah.
Have Richard Curtis. I think he did Four Weddings and a Funeral. He did Love Actually, and he does all those British rom-coms and stuff. I think he'd be prime to do something like this, or do an adaptation of A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. Do the musical as a film.
Is the musical something you can regularly see? Is it something community theaters do, or
Community theaters do it. In fact, I believe the musical, when it was in early stages in the early 2000s, I saw it in 2015 when it was on Broadway, but I believe it even went by Kind Hearts and Coronets early on when it was in its early stages. But it is put on by community theaters and smaller theaters nowadays. I believe there is, if not a pro shot, there is a recording of it. I think if you go to the New York Public Library, or there's a theater library, if you go in, you can watch pretty much any film, any Broadway show that's been on stage. You have to watch it there, but you can watch pretty much any show that they've ever put on Broadway. They always record it for posterity. They just never release it to the public.
that's a really good tip. Thank you. And thank you for being my guest. It's an honor, really. I love when people love to come on and talk to me about film.
The
And
honor is all mine.
where can we generally find you? And are there any projects you'd like to mention specifically?
Sure. So I'm mostly on TikTok at Lobby Intros under the name Let's All Go to the Lobby. You can find me on the free streaming app Mometu, MOMETU.com, where I host their classic films. If you like those TCM introductions, I do those professionally for Mometu. And I'm on Instagram at Lobby_intros.
For all those listeners out there, all those watchers, just think, is it funny?